I'm going to speak just for a minute about what it is and what it does, and then I'm going to talk about how it came to be, because it started from very humble means, and I hope to leave the most time that I can at the end for us to get to know each other a little bit and talk about kind of some of your ambitions, what you hope to do, and how to go about it.
The Altruist Relief Kitchen in Ukraine sourced recycled drilling equipment to build the nearly indestructible 50-foot field tents that hold our humanitarian kitchens. This industrial kitchen in Lviv can cook thousands of meals a day on wood-fired stoves without the need for gas or electricity, so that we can keep serving food even when nearby missile strikes take out utility infrastructure, causing citywide blackouts. Now, after over 7 months of serving food for the families who have fled to Lviv, ARK has served over 100,000 meals at 33 cents per meal, meaning that we are making dozens of times more meals per dollar than even the largest organizations. For the past 7 years, ARK has been serving food after floods and hurricanes in big cities, and serving food for refugee migrations in barren deserts, preparing for this event. Now, in advance of the second winter of the war, our wood-fired off-grid industrial kitchen has established all of the necessary supply chains, and our skilled Ukrainian crew is trained in running this unique system.
So the Altruist Relief Kitchen is a project to provide basic necessities, food, water, shelter, medical, sanitation, in the most difficult situations in the world. War, famine, extreme poverty, natural disasters, in a radically sustainable, efficient, and transparent way. So, radically sustainable. It's almost entirely made out of recycled, locally sourced, easily available, or very cheap materials, and it can be sustained, which is to say that almost all of the energy for the system comes from this set of 6 industrial rocket stoves, so that we don't need to rely on fossil fuel supply chain and electricity. We can cook food and purify water and heat the kitchen on any available flammable material. It's radically efficient in many ways. It can be collapsed down very easily and moved into a remote location, set up for people who are missed by primary events. The money donated to the organization goes directly to women running the project, generally mothers in the area, in this case in Ukraine, that are administering the project and cooking the food and distributing it. So it's an aid project before it serves its first meal, supporting these women and their families in the local communities. And primarily, the evidence of its efficiency, I mentioned briefly in the video that we served 100,000 meals at 33 cents a meal, about 3 meals per dollar. And it's because of these efficiencies and sustainabilities that something like that is possible. Paying women in Ukraine to run the kitchen rather than high-paid Americans, for example. And it's radically transparent in the sense that we show what happens to the money from when it comes in until when it goes out of the organization. But another way to look at it is that this is the only financially transparent humanitarian organization. We show photographs of all of the money down to cash donations and anonymous donations through videos of what's happening, what's logistic videos, what's being accomplished, all the way down to photographs of all of the receipts corresponding to all of the expenses matched against who posted them and where and why and for what, and then videos explaining that whole process with particular attention to anomalies or interesting events. It sounds simple. It's absolutely unprecedented, unparalleled. No one else tries to show what happens to money in an organization. And it can be implemented in a few capacities For example, the one that you see in Ukraine, it employs these stoves that are completely, even themselves, collapsible. This is 4 stoves you see here that are broken down into a very small bundle that can be put on a cart and moved into a remote or inaccessible locale where the people are often overlooked by humanitarian organizations and often needed the services before the calamity ensued. This is the whole frame being put up with winches and pulleys. So the whole thing can be taken down by hand, moved into very remote locations. This version of the tent of the kitchen in Ukraine employs that capacity. In Turkey, the one under development implements the maximum volume of food, connecting multiple tents together and cooking the most possible food in each tent by having 250-liter pots. 6 of them in unison is 1,500 liters, something on the order of 10,000 meals a day. Set up in a refugee camp eliminates the distribution constraints. The third capacity you could imagine to being implemented in a place like sub-Saharan Africa where there's very little flammable material, where the stoves are hyper-insulated, the pots are pressure cookers rather than open-top pots, and parabolic dishes and Fresnel lenses for cooking and things of that nature to maximize the efficiency of the flammable material. And each of those kitchens then is a production facility. It's a daycare or a clinic or a birthing center, but it is a manufacturing center to build additional kitchens at a very low cost to set them up in the surrounding area. The description that I just gave, that it's reinventing humanitarian aid from scratch, from first principles, rather than taking the existing format, with the intention of building a robust base layer, providing these basic necessities, because if you picture planting 1 million trees in a remote location, you have to support 1,000 people to be in that remote location to do it with all of their basic necessities. Or if a clinic or a school is 99% food and water and sanitation. Those things are impossible without food and water and sanitation. If you want to build an infrastructure project in an impoverished community, you have to support that those people have enough free time to engage in that kind of activity. So it's meant to be the base layer of every other aid project. By the time food was starting to be served, it was the year 2012. And I barged everything I ever owned down from Alaska, my meager possessions, and bought a couple of school buses to move them around on, and just began serving food. At first in forest festivals, the only place where you can give away 1,000 pounds of food a day. I bought all the kegs off of Craigslist and cut them into stainless steel soup pots. Bought all of the teepees off of in the Northwest, and continuously made the teepees larger and larger, started designing them and building them until they were the largest teepees in the world on accident, and moved the whole kitchen inside of it. And continuously learning how to tap mountain springs, how to serve food on large scales, how to filter water in many different situations, coordinating volunteers, dealing with difficult situations, troubleshooting problems, inventing the gear, inventing the carts and the pots and all of the things that would be necessary at these forest festivals for the first 4 years in a relatively low stakes environment. At this point, it's 2016, and hundreds of people had worked on this project at this point. So there was a volunteer base, we had procedures and everything in place. Just a month later, we moved over to the hurricanes that predictably hit the southeast United States in August and September, and began providing basic necessities.
We're currently feeding people in Baker, Louisiana, and shuttling food out to the surrounding communities.
Yesterday we did 236 meals, including 100 that were sent out to the surrounding communities that are immobile. And this is our second day in the kitchen outside. And
We want to relieve the burden economically for people so they can recover from this.
And Shining Light began to set up the 6 teepees that it brought from 1,000 miles away. The expenses associated with the transportation of the teepees were covered by a benefit at K-Bay Cafe in Homer, Alaska, and the poles were donated by the Shining Light Kitchen. The kitchen was able to serve over 100 gallons of food in a single meal on 7 wood stoves, mounted inside the largest functional teepee in the world. We set up our rapid response tent and the entire kitchen inside of it on the lawn of an event center. Ultimately, we set up 3 field kitchens in Houston following Hurricane Harvey. Our 4,000 square foot field kitchen provided hot meals and fresh water for the lowest income communities in Houston for 2 months. We cooked on 250,000 BTU propane burners. Then we tore down the entire kitchen in 12 hours, moved it 100 miles, and set it back up in 12 hours, while making 3 meals a day for 200 people. In total, we cooked over 10,000 free hot meals for the lowest income communities in Houston.
Tell us about the community, how you guys got together, and why you're here in Houston.
So Altruist Relief Kitchen is a grassroots field kitchen providing emergency free hot meals to the people affected by the hurricane.
We moved across country and set up the entire kitchen on the border of Mexico early in February 2019. Cooking massive meals on collapsible wood stoves made out of recycled materials, these volunteers have traveled from all over the country to provide food, filtered water, and basic emergency services. Up in a day with only people power and pulleys. Each field tent is spacious enough to be a warehouse, sterile and washable enough to be a medical tent, with high ceilings creating enough natural ventilation to hold a wood-fired industrial kitchen. They're also bright and beautiful enough to be a classroom or a community center.
So it started just with the things that I owned, the shovels and propane tanks and the things that I needed to garden and live in Alaska, barged it down to the lower 48 and just began serving food, just taking little steps forward. I'd return to Alaska in the wintertime, save money, and then spend all of it doing disaster relief the following summer. So it's on the first day of 2023, my mother died. And I had just been working for several months, putting this kitchen, going back and forth to Ukraine, and I buried her in the frozen ground and then flew back to the blizzard in Ukraine to get the kitchen going. This was about 10 months of work, getting all of the logistics and the coordination, the people, and it was still a frozen construction site. This is approximately on my birthday here in January. It was too cold for people to come in. It was a blizzard into the kitchen, so it required quite a lot of effort. I was, in theory, staying in a hostel, but because missiles were bombarding the power system, it was in darkness 23 hours a day. The utilities didn't work, the refrigeration didn't work, there was no water. We would get maybe 1 hour of power each day to charge phones, and then stepping out of the front door to go work to a darkened city. Just no power at all besides propane lights most of the time because the power infrastructure had been hammered so hard. Illuminated at night by the lights of city buses. I had set up, my daughter had just turned 18, and I had set up to take 2 weeks off from humanitarian aid to travel with her through ancient ruins in Turkey. And we showed up on the day of the largest earthquake in recorded history, and instead of going to ancient ruins, went to live in modern ruins. It destroyed an area the size of England on the southern side of the country on the Syrian border. This is a distribution center in Istanbul where gear was being moved. I went there primarily to meet young people who are the most likely to speak English in any country. So for translation and interpretation, finding the youngest high school and college age people is the quickest way of finding English translation. So we called all of the places around the epicenter to decide where were the most heavily affected places that we were still going to be able to set up with wood and water and access to the manufacturing capacity. This is down now on the Syrian border in the town of the city of Gaziantep. This is a pendulum monument made into the center of the city that swung violently and smashed into those pillars on the night of the earthquake, the same night that the castle of Gaziantep collapsed after standing for 2,000 years. Just a testament to the severity of the earthquake. But more than anything, the tent camps, because anyone who survived the quake no longer trusted their buildings and moved out into the streets, doctors and lawyers and dentists living under tarps, just instantaneously in a single night, having their children collect plastic out of the streets to cook rice on. So a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, one evening, the next morning, cooking rice on plastic fires under a tarp in front of your apartment complex. Just an incredible juxtaposition across the whole southern side of the country. But I was there to manufacture the kitchen from scratch, from available materials. So I found a translator, went around to different places. This is a cover manufacturing facility. This is my one of my translators here, Hamed. And Gaziantep and Kahramanmaraş, they're both industrial production facilities of stainless steel kitchen equipment. So I can get the best stainless steel kitchen equipment cheaper than cutting a keg into a pot. And being a Muslim country, there are no kegs anywhere in the country, so it was lucky. I was sleeping on the ground in sub-freezing temperatures because the buildings were still falling. I was there during the biggest aftershock of the earthquake, a 6.8, and it was still bringing destabilized buildings to the ground. But then, going back and forth between Turkey and Ukraine, I flew back to Ukraine to finish the kitchen and get it online and ready to serve food. This is just a day or two before February 24th, the anniversary of the beginning of the war, when the whole calamity began. And I had to sit in a cafe and meet people in Ukrainian and translate the conversations for a few days to find cooks and people who could run the kitchen back and forth every hour on the hour. I met a different person, interviewed them, and then told them all to come to the kitchen on the same day. And on March 7th, 9 people showed up, and we all just started cooking food, and I had one day to figure out who may be good at running the kitchen in an adverse situation and making fires, cooking on the fires. And some of this footage is from the next day, March 8th, which was the opening day ceremony of the kitchen. So I had 2 days before I had to return to Turkey to find the right crew. There was already a woman who you'll see later who had been running the whole project, who makes it possible in some ways. But I had to find this whole crew. The Catholic Church went to great lengths to bring all of the administration from the city and reporters, and made a huge ceremony so that we were in every newspaper and media station across the whole country. It helped open up the doors to shelters for delivery as well.
I just want to say I really enjoyed learning about your organization. I had no idea how long it's taken you to get to Ukraine and Turkey and all of these places in need, and I think that's just really commendable, and that I think you're doing some really amazing work.
Thank you.
How did you pay from traveling between Ukraine and Turkey back and forth?
You know, I put in all my money for 12 years, but I was really saving up for this 2023 when I knew the thing would need to ignite all at once or it was just going to fall apart. So I put every dollar I possibly could, including moving out of my house.
How have you handled communication issues other than translations from having to go back and forth between multiple different countries for all of the kitchens around the world?
Communication, it's been really wild. The text, amazingly, this is the first moment ever where I can text with anybody in any language. So it's incredibly helpful. When I was traveling doing humanitarian aid in Nicaragua, I had to have a pocket dictionary and learn the language. And it was incredibly difficult to flip through this pocket dictionary where you can download basically every language onto your phone now. It's still really cumbersome and difficult on some level, but texting is just this easy one button push communication thing. But I think on a deeper nuance of what you're saying is it's learning what each person means when they say each thing. It's really like the most difficult part of this project is learning about people and working with them and motivating them and testing them in ways that they can do something before it's you're relying on them. So the human dynamic was incredibly complex, and it's taken more time than the gear itself.
Curious about the engineering of it all. Like, do you have a background in engineering or building it all? Because some of those things are very impressive.
Thanks. Yeah, I just started off really poor and had to figure things out really quickly as a young kid, so I just taught myself how to build.
Can I ask, what did you study?
History and anthropology, because that's like the story of how humans came out of the trees and then developed civilization and went to the moon.
I'm curious to know about your early funding and material sourcing. When you were at the era of just putting this all into practice, where was that money for the food coming from? Where was the coordination coming from? I know you mentioned you had maybe a sponsor from a cafe in Alaska. Was that your?
No, very early on I was funding basically the logistics myself, but then we caught the eye of Organic Valley, and whenever we would do disaster relief, Organic Valley would send us as much food as we could make, and they had a partnership with a dry food company, so they would provide 98% of the food for us. But all the other logistic things, I would just save money during the winter to spend it during the summer doing disaster relief.
Cool. Thank you. This has been very inspirational.
Yeah, I'd love to talk with you more.
So I was wondering how exactly the chefs were compensated, if it was voluntary basis and they get paid food, or if it's through funding outside sources, or if they're charging people to for their meals.
You were asking about the Ukrainian, or
like the chefs that you hire?
Yeah, so in Ukraine, all of those women, so the standard pre-war wage was $20 a day in Ukraine, and I'm paying those women $35 a day. And it's the reason in some levels that, like in one case, her husband can stay in the house so that he doesn't get conscripted and blown up at the front line. So that's been really motivating to come up with that money every week. And that's part of why I, sold my vehicles and moved out of my house so that I could make sure that that worked. So I was taking care of it. I had 50% of the donations in 2022, and then this year I've only put in 10%. So we've been able to raise a lot of money externally, but it really required that the thing have its own momentum before it was possible to fundraise in the way that we have this year.
That's really cool. At the fall, that's good.
What's up?
At the fall, but that's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's 4. I don't know if everybody's probably leaving in 2 minutes, or you don't.
It's fine. I mean, we can stand here. If you need to
go,
we understand.
Yeah, what's up?
But yeah, we can keep going.
It's kind of cynical, but how do you stop the chefs from just charging, basically turning to the restaurant?
Oh, yeah, it's, partially that woman who I didn't have a chance to show you the video, but it's on the website of, you find one woman who is just impeccable integrity and brilliant and good with people, and that is kind of like the linchpin where she receives the money and spends it and oversees the whole thing. And as long as I have a line of sight to the integrity of that person, she can maintain the operation of the other people goes well.
I guess my question is primarily about when you're in these locations where there's either conflict or a natural disaster, how do you source the wholesale, bulk food items?
Man, so it's different in each place, but I'll tell one story where nobody answers emails or phone calls anymore. It's basically like the 1200s where you have to throw a message into the ocean and hope somebody finds it. So I tried to get a hold of Caritas, a charity in Poland that gives out bulk food, and I had to fly to Warsaw in the wintertime and live in a hostel next to their headquarters and knock on the door every day and get the phone numbers of everybody that came and went and called them for a week and finally got a meeting and talked to the right people and got months of truckloads of food delivered to the kitchen. but it takes that kind of just a complete belligerence to get through to anybody about those types of things. And it's different in each place. So like I mentioned, I had a partnership with Organic Valley for disaster relief. And in Turkey, I'm hoping that the alliance with the Red Crescent will be sufficient that not only I can get food, but then I can have access to each of these other Muslim nations through that association.
I heard you mention when you opened the kitchen in Ukraine, what church was it? Someone
like a Catholic church.
A Catholic church came and it was in all the newspapers. Is that one of the main ways that people heard about the kitchen, or do you guys have to like reach out to the community and inform people and invite them?
That was the main way that people found out about it. You know, we do kind of reach out to different circles, but I had no idea that was going to generate like news coverage from the whole country. And we set up on Catholic churches because it's like sovereign territory. Even on private property, the city administration can come and say, well, you have to pay bribes or taxes or whatever it is, but the Vatican owns that property. So, you know, and it's all run by Krishnas. All the people cooking that food are Krishnas, but they're doing it on the lawn of a Catholic church. And that building behind the tent, 100 refugees, women and children were living in that building. So it was this immediate application. But that was the reason for being there, and it was kind of spontaneous that it got the coverage that it did.
Also, another question. You mentioned also about how that newspaper and like the interview opened doors of other shelters for deliveries. Do you deliver stuff by vehicle or?
Yeah, distribution is incredibly difficult everywhere for everyone, and so we're moving towards in Turkey setting up in-tent camps to distribute things just within 100 feet of the door because it brings the capacity up to the maximum. We'll be able to make 10,000 meals a day, but 1,000 is the most that we can manage in Ukraine because we're driving it to shelters and the railway station and places where refugees are fleeing. So that distribution limits the capacity more than any other single factor.
How do you balance finding cheap and available resources with providing food that is nutritional and also culturally significant? Because you're working both in Christian and in Muslim countries, and so they have different diets. But I was also wondering, like, you can provide calories and macaroni to people and keep them alive, but how do you go further and how do you provide them with nutritional and culturally significant food? How do you balance that?
Yeah, those are great questions. So I never dictate the meal specifically. I find local women to run the kitchen. Women are better at leadership in basically every capacity. The loudest man who decides to want to do it is never going to be the best leader of the people. It's always the introspective woman who understood what everyone else was thinking in the room. And I find the best women who are able to cook food that people want to serve in that area and then figure out physically how to scale that up. Just explain how to scale that up. And the nutritional thing, so I got really deep into nutrients. I can diagnose nutrient deficiencies just with a series of questions about what people eat. So I came up with, I made charts based on commonly available foods and the nutritional value, and then I can just ask questions. Just like you're saying, they might need 3 canned oysters a day because they have a zinc deficiency, and rice and beans aren't going to do anything. So figuring those things out, I can just make kind of suggestions to the cooks.
Real quick, what was your motivation to start this coming from Alaska and selling everything to build these tents and traveling around?
I love the big picture, the scale and scope of, like I said, anthropology and history, animals coming out of the trees and inventing civilization to go into space and understand the nature of reality, and the big arc of plants and animals as an ecosystem becoming conscious and then understanding the sum total of its place in the universe as an organism. It's so interesting to me that I wanted to participate in the larger arc of consciousness on a longer scale. So I was like, if I have 50 years to dedicate to something to improve the progression of consciousness, what can I do that's possible that is the most impactful thing I could use in that half century of time? And reinventing humanitarian aid, starting from a base level, I felt that even if I died in the process, it would be something worthwhile, even if it was half completed.
That's awesome. Second part is, what do you think is the biggest struggle for your organizations to grow?
What do you think? Is it like volunteers or sheer monetary issues, or is it just not enough awareness?
You know, it really is participation on some level that it takes a really special kind of person to be interested enough in the nature of reality and want to dedicate their time to participate in improving it on some level. And they have to see the inherent, like, exciting, interesting element of it. And there's so few of those people in the world. You know, I hate to say, on average, maybe there's 1 million of us, probably only 100,000. And so that's part of why I'm going to colleges, is I'm really interested in cooperating with like-minded people who want to engage in this global commons and improve it in some substantial way.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was wondering, is there a specific moment or memory that you look back on through your time doing humanitarian relief that kind of helps push you through like the tougher parts of your job?
On this really immediate, tangible level, there's all of these people that I'm interacting with, I can just see this tangible thing. It's like you're walking down a path, on a beautiful path on a sunny day, next to a stream, and someone yells help from the stream. You have this, on some level, you're responsible for the things that you can do. And we're born into the unimaginable privilege that kings and queens didn't have 200 years ago. So by using just a fraction, a sliver of that luxury and privilege, you can change the world in a really comprehensive way over the course of time if you have the determination. So on some level, it's like we're responsible for it. It's an opportunity. It's incredible that we can, but we're responsible for it. So on a tangible level, it's those stories like these people that are working on the kitchen, and on a broader kind of like existential level, 10 years from now, this could be in 100 countries and it could be making a really incredible impact in ways that I couldn't even imagine right now. And so that long-term point on the horizon perspective, and then each step in front of me, how does it continue just the lives of the families of the people that are making it happen?
It's amazing, thank you. What I was wondering is just, is there anything that we can do, like at our own college? Like, we're probably not going to go travel to Ukraine in the next month or two, but is there anything maybe on the smaller scale that we can do?
Man, that's such a great question, and I tried to allude to it briefly, but 95% of this project happens conceptually and on the internet and through brainstorming and conversations from people in different parts of the world. Almost all of it can be done from the college or university or your bedroom, and it depends on your own personal interest on some level. Like, you have some particular talent, something that you're really good at and interested in, that's why I kind of had a general list of things. There's grant writing and brainstorming and strategic planning and research and so many things. This is the most tangible way where you can just, in 5 hours on a weekend, do something that you see the impact of it, where it just drastically alters people's lives. So there really are so many things, from writing newsletters to web design and videos, that each are part of the link in the chain that make the whole thing possible. Most of it can be done from the university. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
You mentioned with certain organizations, there's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy. What are organizations that you recommend? For example, your daughter's doing humanitarian aid right now. Like, what organizations?
She's going to be working with this organization. She wants to go into nursing, and we're setting this up as a kitchen clinic birthing center on the border of Guatemala. So she'll be working with my friend Nicole, who I didn't get to show her video, working with women on the border of Guatemala. But it's difficult. I hesitate to say too much about other organizations because I've learned a lot about them, and they are, there's this framework. I guess the way that I'll answer your question a little bit around the corner is that for thousands of years, all of the power structures were like monarchies. And then we invented governments, which were this kind of dynamic thing, but it was still like dozens in the whole world. And then corporations came together, and it seems like moving spices is anomalous, but it was an incredible advancement to have the power centers located in small groups of people. And then after World War II, on the model of corporations, people built humanitarian organizations entirely with the the motivation of being beneficial, whether for a group of people or an ecosystem or one specific thing. So it was this tremendous leap forward in human consciousness to adopt this idea of corporate power structure to humanitarian and environmental causes. But it was made all simultaneously, these organizations, right after World War II, and they built in the same systemic flaws. And then the ones since then have just recopied those same systemic flaws. So we're trying to rebuild the whole thing from scratch, from first principles, thinking about what you would need to do to have a transparent and efficient and sustainable system that interacts with people more humanely, and a whole list of different things that are harder to get into. But in short, we're trying to build it from scratch because if there was an existing organization, I would have joined it instead.